First of all, I'd just like to say this is really cool.
Look, can we just talk about something else, please?
Since it's already quiet, I guess we might as well start the team meeting.
Greetings to you, wherever you're listening or watching, and welcome to the second episode of the Little Big Fantasy League podcast. During last week's inaugural episode, we chatted for over an hour about our predictions for the upcoming MLB season. And if you missed that first episode, we highly recommend going back to give that a listen. A week later, we're back and we've got some hot topics to chat through today, including the Tokyo Series, our fantasy baseball league's stash draft, which took place a couple of weeks ago, and a trade that took place about a couple of weeks ago now as well. Now, before we get started, Carter is going to introduce this week's special guest. It's going to be the first ever special guest that we have on the show.
All right. So this week's special guest is a native of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and current resident of Wayland, Michigan. As an esteemed former broadcaster for the Cougar Sports Network, this week's guest is a die-hard Tigers fan who now spends his days teaching special education. Introducing the Little Big Fantasy League commissioner and owner of the Detroit Mariners, John Ustindi.
Thank you for those kind words, Carter, and that introduction. I do think that we've been friends now for 4, 5, 6 maybe years, and I'd appreciate if you could learn how to pronounce my name correctly. So
I thought he did it right.
yeah, it's all right.
So it is Ostindi. Are we defining that officially, or?
I thought his name was special guest.
Well, it's been up in the air for this long.
I'm telling you, we should have just stuck to special guest and just left it with that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to get right into it here. Our first topic for discussion today is going to be the Tokyo Series. It kicked off the MLB season. The Cubs and Dodgers played 2 games this past Tuesday and Wednesday last week. The Dodgers earned the series sweep. So let's chat game 1. Yamamoto and Imanaga on the mound kicks off the entire Major League season. It's like an opening day before an opening day, but international. Last year it was the Seoul Series in South Korea. This year, obviously being played in Japan, you've got 2 Japanese pitchers going at it on their home soil. What kind of stood out for you guys in game 1?
I think for me, game 1, looking at it was Yamamoto's performance. I think he looked really good out there. Only allowed 3 hits and an earned run, 5 innings. Typically, in a first start of the year, they're not gonna throw him out there for 7, 8 innings. So I like that, but I definitely like where it's headed for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think Yamamoto was the star of the show. Like you said, 4 strikeouts, 5 solid innings. You can't ask for too much more at the beginning of the season. Imanaga, on the other end, definitely worked through some trouble. 4 walks, worked out of some jams, struggled with a little bit of control issues, but honestly not a terrible first start given that he was able to limit the damage. So Ben Brown comes in after Imanaga in the 5th inning there. And from there, it got a little bit sloppy for the Cubs. John Birdie ended up making a throwing error. Looked to be a pretty routine double play ball. Game kind of opened up. From there, Shohei Ohtani really showed out, I think, in this series overall as well. And that started, I think, in game 1. Had a couple hits, a couple runs scored. And really offensively, not a great showing overall from the Cubs, who were held to just 3 hits. Any thoughts on that there, JD?
Yeah, my MVP prediction starting off slow with Kyle Tucker there. I know he had a rough spring, but so yeah, it's very early, and so I noticed that. But just on the other side of the Dodgers, their first 2 games without Mookie and Freeman, so hopefully whatever's going on with Mookie gets better. But yeah, you take those 2 out and they still look dominant. It's scary. So
I think that's kind of what sets the Dodgers apart is you can take out two MVPs from their lineup and you're like, they still might be the favorites to win the NL without like Freeman or Mookie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's totally agree with that. I didn't really know that Mookie was going to be out, and then I saw that he originally traveled with the team. They sent him back, and it's still looking like this illness that he's got is holding on to him. I saw that he had an interview where he said he's not able to keep anything down still. So that's definitely some concern, especially as he's on my team.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Sal Frelick of the Brewers came into the year. They said he had gained 25 pounds, and you got Mookie Betts out here now. They say that he's lost about 20 or 25 pounds. So, I mean, for a guy too that, is a little bit shorter, kind of on the leaner side, and Mookie Betts, it's definitely concerning, I think, for the Dodgers. But, carrying into game two, I think you really saw the depth that the Dodgers had. I mean, um, just it's still I feel like a pretty deep lineup, but really I think the main storyline there is obviously Roki Sasaki making his major league debut. Carter Sasaki kind of came out in that first inning, really was able to establish himself early on, topped out at 101 miles per hour. Dealt with some control issues, but it is quite the story, I think, for such a young player to be making his major league debut again on his home turf.
Yeah, and he did draw a lot of walks there, but once he had those bases loaded and stuff, he kind of got himself out of that jam himself. I'm sure the nerves had a lot to do with that, especially there in Japan. But I think it was really impressive that the bases were loaded there, and he was able to, I guess, put those nerves, calm his nerves a little bit, and still get those two strikeouts at the end there to finish the inning there.
Yeah, definitely. Final line on Sasaki there. 3 innings pitched, a hit, 1 run, 5 walks. A little concerning, but 3 strikeouts. Like Carter mentioned, able to kind of work out of some jams, as did Imanaga in game one. Tommy Edman, there's a depth piece right there. Hit the first home run of the major league season. I mean, it's guys like that, Edman on the Cardinals last year, not getting a whole lot of attention, but just kind of a depth piece add for the Dodgers, and that's really not a bad left-handed bat to have in your lineup there.
No, definitely a good utility guy to have. Can play a few different positions and it provides a solid bat when you need it. Are you going to need it the whole year when you get some of your superstars back? You might not. I mean, when Mookie comes back and Mookie's playing second, you got Freeman back at first. Probably not a bat that's going to get a lot of attention, but definitely good to see him performing when he gets those opportunities.
Yeah, definitely. Another depth piece, Kike Hernandez, an absolute nuke, pulled one into left field for a nice 2 run shot. A guy that's, I think this is now his third stint with the Dodgers. And I mean, that's the type of guy that you bring back, and it's kind of a feel-good story, but you look at the splits for a guy like Kike Hernandez, who really dominates left-handed pitching. Again, he's not going to be an everyday starter like Tommy Edman. Similar story there where he's not going to start every day, but Kike Hernandez, another nice depth piece, can play multiple positions for Los Angeles.
For sure. For sure, for sure. I've always liked Kike. He was on the Red Sox even.
Couple more items for game two. Cubs pitchers, 7 walks in game two, combined in 1 and 2 overall, 15 walks in the 2-game series. Not the way that the Cubs wanted to start the season. Now, going back to last week's episode where we had several of our podcast team members pick the Cubs to win the division, is it concerning a little bit the way the Cubs started the season off pretty slowly here on the offensive front, on the defensive front, and the pitching front as well?
Well, I wasn't there to make the predictions for that Central Division, which you all got wrong because it would be the Brewers that take on the Central this year. Just you can't beat an organization with that much class. I know the Cubs wish they would have some more class there, but that's besides the point. No, I'm not worried about the Cubs because they are a team that's going to figure it out as they go. This is the team where they brought in a lot of pieces and a lot of pieces left. it's probably going to take him 30 to 60 games. If you're a Cubs fan, you might not like the sound of how many games that's going to take, but it's going to take them a bit to figure out who they really are, like as an organization, and who they are as a team with, sending out Bellinger, but then you also have this 1 year deal with Tucker. It's kind of like, this is the year. Either you do it or it's not going to happen. So, and if they were thinking that they're going to drop $400-500 million on Tucker, you're going to want to see some success in that first year with it.
Right. Yeah, I don't think Cubs fans should be worried. I think that obviously in an ideal situation, I think you split the series because I don't think you're ever going to take both from the Dodgers. So ideally you would have won one of them in there, and you didn't. It didn't go your way. It is what it is. But the guys that had a slow start, like Tucker going 1 for 8 and Shaw going 1 for 9, it's a 2-game sample size. They're going to figure it out. They're going to be a good team.
Yeah, and they've got several young players that they're going to be leaning on this year, whether it's like Pecro Armstrong, like in your first or your second year, like those guys take time, and also a completely different environment than they've ever played. And going to the Tokyo Dome, like that's not just like playing a random Tuesday at Wrigley, right? Like there's different expectations when you're the first game of the season in an entirely different country.
That's a
Yeah,
home
very good
game
point.
for them, though. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely some good thoughts there. So, we talked game one, we talked game two. Thinking about the Tokyo series collectively, was the Tokyo series a success? And let's start by talking about the timing. 6 a.m. Eastern start time for both games. Personally, I got up early both days, not much of a morning person, but had to get up. Felt like, kind of like an opening day where I was just itching to watch some baseball. So the other thing to consider, if you're a Cubs fan in the Central Time Zone, you're getting up at 5 a.m. And if you're a Dodgers fan on the West Coast, you're getting up at 3 a.m. So is it worth it overall for those early start times when we're talking the folks on the Western Hemisphere?
Well,
I
I think.
I think it is.
Oh,
Who wants to go? You want to go, John?
no, you got it.
All right. I think it's worth it just because, I mean, you see the draw that it gets in Japan. I don't know if it's as much about the US as it is about growing the game at that point, And you look at the impact, even like think about Sasaki, like the first time we saw him was at the WBC. So it's like that. I see it as like more of a growing the game kind of perspective. And those numbers show a lot there. And especially with those two teams and like the amount of, players that come from there in each of those teams. So I think it is. It's just 2 games, and I think it's definitely worth it. But yeah, like you said, Leo, you kind of have to be very interested to get up that early. I know I recorded the first game and watched it later, but it's still cool.
But yeah, I
Yeah,
think JD nailed it there, saying like, who is the games for? It's not really for your guy who's watching, 100 baseball games already in the year. It's for that entirely separate audience in a different country.
yeah, I think it definitely paid off overall. You look at the viewership records, saw some stats. Game one had over 25 million viewers only in Japan. So that like doesn't even consider the US audience there. In comparison, 25 million viewers for a baseball audience is the largest since Game 7 of the 2017 World Series, which was Dodgers versus Astros, which we all remember all so well. The Astros, of course, with the trash can banging scandal, stealing of signs, and the Astros came out victorious there as well. I think, the Dodgers are always going to draw a strong international audience. But I mean, you look at the country of Japan, the size of the country geographically, the population of the country overall, way smaller compared to the US in both geography and population. But to draw 25 million viewers only in Japan, I'm completely on the same page as you there, JD. Like it's totally growing the game internationally, and I think for me, like the defining moment, honestly, of the series is Sasaki's debut because he's so young as well. Like we've seen throughout the last 20 years in Major League Baseball, a lot of Japanese players coming over in their late 20s or early 30s, sometimes mid 30s, and they're at a point in their career where it's not quite as exciting because you only get to watch them for a few years and then they've retired. But, a guy like Roki Sasaki, now we get to look forward to watching his entire career.
Right. And I think as a whole, this series was a success. Like the other guys said, this wasn't a series for the US. I mean, baseball is America's pastime, but that doesn't mean it's only for America. Um, any way you can grow the game and make it bigger, it's only going to help. Um, yeah, it was the start of the season, but again, the games weren't for America. They were for fans that really enjoy the game outside of America.
Yeah, without a doubt. Any other closing thoughts just overall on the Tokyo series?
Where does the where's the next series that MLB hasn't been?
It's a good question. I
I
believe there's a couple of teams that are going to be playing in Mexico again, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I know they've scheduled the Mexico series in the past. I think this is actually kind of an important question for the MLB. Like the NFL like set it up right. Like they did England, they did Mexico, they went over to Brazil this year. And it's not just like their two big market teams that they send over. It's like they kept hitting different markets and building on that. They played games in Canada, preseason games there, right? So what is the next market? Is it Dominican? That's already a huge baseball area. But would it be sweet for you, the Miami to go down there and play against some other MLB team in the beginning of the year? I think that's an easier swing just because of like geographical locations.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah, I agree.
Dominican's a great.
Here's an idea. Here's a
Yeah.
out of left field idea. Kumar Rocker, one of the first Indian baseball players, jump into that cricket audience. That's a big audience in India. It's a lot of people there. So
Am
I
I
don't know.
hearing $1 million arm?
This is the Little Big League podcast, not Million Dollar Arm podcast.
Those are some good thoughts there. I like the Dominican. I like India. Puerto Rico comes to mind. I'm not sure if they've played there internationally. So they did the London series last year. They've done that a few times in the past 5 years, it looks like. And looks like Mexico series also happened last year. I want to say it's happening again this year as well.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think it's happening. I do have one more thought surrounding this for the MLB, and that's the teams that they bring over. They're bringing over Chicago, LA, Philly, New York. Those are typically your teams that go. Those are your four teams that are known internationally. I think they should use this more as an opportunity to market some of that small market organizations, but have some of that high end talent. I kind of had this like dream. I was like, well, let's say like obviously Tigers, you want to see them play, but let's say it was the Tigers and the Pirates. They'd be like, why on earth would you put those teams there? But think about that game one matchup. You would then market
Beans,
Scooble
Google.
and Skeens
Hmm.
to an entire new audience where these are two players that you should be marketing who aren't going to get it because they're playing in Pittsburgh and Detroit.
Yeah.
And I couldn't agree more with that. Definitely, obviously, as a Tigers fan, I would love to see Detroit get a game um, somewhere besides the U.S. Um, Talking about expanding that market, I think it's important to for sure. Um, I don't know necessarily if this would be a great idea, but I'd like to see some Europe games, possibly Italy. I don't think the market is huge necessarily in these European countries, but there are MLB players from Italy, from France. Why not?
Yeah, I think you would
Yeah.
sell out those stadiums. I mean, you look at the football games they play like 4 or 5 games their year. It's not just fans of those teams. It's like you see literally every single team's jersey there. They're just fans of the sport. I
Right.
think it can be done well where you would play multiple different countries in Europe and get success with it. And I think you can line it up with like an all-star break and some time off there. And maybe you take a chunk out of the season and you have multiple teams play. It would be a scheduling nightmare, but they could figure it out.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think the more that they expand, the better it is for baseball. I think the overall consensus among this group is the Tokyo series was definitely a success, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and take our first break. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor.
Overwatch. Pechamari. Lights on. Lights off. Lights on. Introducing the exclusive Overwatch Pechamari light up icon. Collect them all at Paladone. Gift something better.
Welcome back to episode 2 of the Little Big Fantasy League podcast. Just a quick note here as we were talking international Tokyo series. The Red Sox are actually concluding spring training in Mexico the 24th and 25th. So today and tomorrow, as we're recording this podcast on March 24th, they're going to be playing a couple of exhibition games. So another interesting note there internationally. I don't think it's being quite as advertised as it would if they were facing an MLB opponent, but it sounds like they're going to be playing some teams from Mexico over the next couple of days here.
And Trevor Bauer, you think?
I'm actually not sure on that. I'd have to look that one up.
Maybe they'll bring him back to the MLB. Who knows?
Yeah, never know.
That's a whole separate podcast there, Joe.
The Trevor Bauer podcast. We just watch his YouTube.
All right, so for the first time, we're going to be doing a special segment here. This one is my special segment. It's called Leo's Trivial Pursuit. Going to be asking the rest of our podcast team members here, and of course our special guest, Mr. O. Stindy, to be precise, a couple of trivia questions here. So I'm going to state the first question. Everybody's got a pen and paper. Everyone's going to write down their answer. I'll give you guys about 30 seconds to decipher a single answer for each question. We'll go around, and if nobody has the correct answer, we'll go for round 2. I might throw a hint in there as well. So, first question is, which Detroit Tigers player led the team in doubles last year with 28? And I'll throw roughly 30 seconds on the clock here. 28 doubles for a Detroit Tigers player. Which player was it? Cue the Jeopardy music. Looks like Carter's already got his answer there. Looks confident. John has his answer. Joe giving it some deep thought. And JD looks like he's looking up to a couple of light bulbs right now. He's got that pool table light behind him there. Nice relic. All right, gentlemen, that is 30 seconds. Let's start with Carter for this one.
I guessed Riley Green.
All right, Riley Green is our first guest. John.
Who is Matt Bierling?
All right, so one guess for Green, one guess for Bierling. JD.
Matt Vierling, you can't see that. Why do they show it?
All right, 2 guesses for Bierling, 1 for Green. Final guess for Joe.
Who is Colt Keith?
All right, so 2 guesses for Bierling, 1 for Keith, and 1 for Green. All fair guesses. All definitely fair guesses there. The correct answer is, I'll be doing a live card reveal. It is Mr. Matty V himself, Matt Bierling, with 28 doubles, leading the Tigers last season. This is the Easter special for 2025 Topps.
Yeah, I think he was so valuable for that team last year. Just healthy, steady presence, top of the lineup. It's gonna suck not having him at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, an over 3 WAR player. I believe he led off in a couple of the postseason games. He's got the positional flexibility to be able to play third base, to be able to play the outfield. He's not the type of guy that's going to maybe steal 20 or 30 bags, but such a threat on the base paths too. Tigers obviously emphasizing solid base running. That's the type of guy where, you hit a soft single, loop single in the outfield, he's going first to third, majority of the time. So definitely going to be tough having Veerling most likely on the IL to start the year. All right, question number 2. This one's going to be a team-related question. All right, so you'll be choosing from one of the 30 major league teams. The question is, which MLB team scored the most runs last year with 886 total runs? And the timer starts now. Looking for the team that scored the most runs with 886. The second place team scored 842. The third place team scored 815. So this team definitely stood out from a run scoring perspective here. 3 teams last year scoring 800 plus runs. 30 seconds goes by quick. Let's go in reverse order this time. Let's start with Joe.
I went with the New York Yankees.
All right. JD.
It's weird. I was just looking at this the other day, and it's either the D-backs or the Padres, and I'm gonna go with the Padres.
All right. One guess for the Yanks, one guess for the Padres. John.
I was right there with JD. However, I landed with the Diamondbacks.
Okay.
Chase Field is a great run-scoring environment.
I wouldn't be surprised if you're right.
Carter.
I guess the Dodgers.
All solid guesses there. All right. The Padres finished 8th in runs scored with 760. The Yankees finished 3rd in runs scored with 815. The Dodgers finished 2nd in runs scored with 842. And the Arizona Diamondbacks scored the most runs last season with 886. And quite honestly, I don't think I would have guessed that.
I only watched a few games last year, and I remembered that Tigers series they had against them. I think like all of them were like double-digit scoring games, and everyone was just hitting doubles and triples like up the gaps the entire time. It was like, and Arizona was built for that speed. Corbin Carroll, they have a great lineup.
That they do. A little bit of added power. We talked about Josh Naylor during the first episode. We talked about the curse of Josh Naylor specifically with the Guardians moving on from their powerhouse first baseman. I think that's going to be a really solid piece for Arizona. I mean, we talk about the Dodgers in the NL West obviously as the big threat there, but I think Diamondbacks have a really nice chance to earn a wild card spot. And if stuff doesn't go the Dodgers' way, I mean, that's a team that realistically could be kind of a dark horse to win that division.
For sure.
Yeah, I still don't see the division at all for anyone else but the Dodgers, but I definitely think the Diamondbacks are a team that is going to get into the playoffs, and then they have a very good rotation that I think they can make some serious noise in the playoffs too. They added Burns this year. They were really solid 1, 2, 3 when you look at that rotation.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, thank you to our sponsor, Baggage, on our first ever episode of Leo's Trivial Pursuit. All right, moving on here. So, last year in our fantasy baseball league, it was the inaugural season, first year, right? Everyone drafts their team. We each have 23 players. And I think last year was really just kind of feeling out, what are these scoring settings going to be like? What are my players going to do here that I drafted? There's a solid amount of pickups from free agency, but there was only one trade last year, which happened between Walt and Cade, the aforementioned Corbin Carroll, was dealt in that deal, and he was dealt for Tobias Myers and Bo Bichette. I believe those were the only two involved in that trade. So only one trade happening in the league last year. I think we can all agree that was quite the fleece for Walt bye week against Cade, Otani's interpreters. Thoughts, gentlemen?
I feel like the commissioner should have stepped in on that one.
Yeah, I think the commissioner kind of phoned it in on that one. Should have stepped in and broke it up. But I mean, can't throw blame around.
I mean, take a
Cade,
look at the
Cade made,
bylaws there, Joe. It does come
yeah,
down to a league vote on that, all right? If there's a stink
right,
arised, all right? So look at those
right.
bylaws.
So yeah, it's tough to point fingers. I think the only one that you can really point fingers at is Cade. I think it was a boneheaded trade, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
got nothing.
Carroll had a horrible start to the year, but you just don't trade away a player like that in a dynasty league.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean he was a first round guy. Corbin Carroll. It sounded like Cade was very high on Tobias Myers. Cade now the pitching coach for Cornerstone University, so he was going after a pitcher. Bichette at that point was kind of at his career low as well. So kind of taking a chance on can Bichette turn it around. Cade ends up dropping Bichette at the end of the year. I grabbed him off of waivers late in the season last year, kind of stashed him away on the bench. And so we're going to see if Bichette can turn it around this year. Um, but definitely want to get into the Blockbuster trade. We're going to jump the gun a little bit. We're going to talk about the stash draft a little bit later in the podcast, but let's talk about the Blockbuster trade between two of our podcast members here today, John and Carter, striking a deal the night of the stash draft. It happened in live time. They had some preliminary discussions there. The second league trade in history for the Little Big Fantasy League. And this big names thrown around there. Adley Rushman being dealt by Carter, Ristopia, of course. In return from John's team, the Detroit Mariners receiving JT Realmuto and Wyatt Langford. Gentlemen, let's start off with how did that deal really come about?
Carter, I'd love to hear it from your perspective first.
Well, I think it all started with one of our outings there in Detroit, and just having a late night conversation about the fantasy league and what sort of both of our teams needed, sort of weak spots on both of our teams, and kind of saw a very mutual beneficial trade that could take place between us, and so yeah, that's kind of how the boss got rolling there.
Yeah, I mean, we chatted about it and then we kind of left it there for a couple weeks. And then we right before the stash draft, the conversation got stoked again, and then we kind of thought that it was finalized about the day before the stash draft. We had a handshake agreement, but then finalized it afterwards.
Yeah, it took me a few days to pull the trigger on it, because at that point Adley was already having a really good sprain at the start there. Uh, so seeing him improve and stuff, like I could tell he's very most likely going to bounce back this year. But yeah, just trying to, I guess, chase that upside with Langford there. Kind of pushed me over the edge there to make that trade happen. So.
Definitely adding a veteran bat there with JT Realmuto. He's been a nice established catcher going back to his time with the Marlins, of course. And, ever since he's been a Philly, he carried that offense right over. He's a little bit on the older side now. So I think, yeah, the big return for Carter there is obviously Wyatt Langford with a ton of upside, but definitely can't discount the season that Langford had last year. I believe finishing top 60 in points in our Yahoo standard points league.
Yeah, and that's also with him having a very bad first half too. Like he had a phenomenal second half. I bet he was a top 25 player in the second half of the season. He was, yeah.
Yeah. I know his first half was pretty depressing there, yeah.
No, I think
But
what's
so was Edley's second half.
all of the Orioles, right?
Yeah, the entire Orioles team, yeah.
So I think what's also interesting about this deal is we're looking at two teams that if you go back into the standings of last year, uh, you guys were fighting for a playoff spot late in the year there, and both finished with 9-12 records. John with substantially more points scored during the season, but two teams at 9-12, maybe not having the finishes that they want. I mean, Joe, JD, just kind of want to get your thoughts here. I mean, you're looking at two teams that are trying to eclipse that 500 mark and have a better season. What do you think about this move for both teams here?
Yeah,
Joe?
I think that um, to most trades there are winners and losers. I think in both this case though, I don't think there is a loser. I think both teams improved. John went and got one of the best catchers in the league in Adley. He'd had a down year that I wouldn't put much stock into that at all. He's one of the best young players in the game. He plays for a team that when their offense is clicking, they have a potential to be one of the best offenses in Major League Baseball. And then you look at Carter, he got a great young talent in Langford. And if he only continues to develop, I think we're going to see a perennial superstar. He also went and got a catcher after dealing one in Real Muto. And yeah, he's aging. He's getting up there, but he's a great veteran bat still. He's a great leader behind the plate on a good Phillies team. I'd say it's a good trade for both parties.
Yeah, I think this is one of those like time will tell. I don't know if there's a clear one. If I'm John, I feel like I'm happy with the trade. Getting a guy like Adley Rutschman, it's an upgrade at the catching position. It's hard to find a good catcher out there. I feel like you can kind of plug and play a lot of outfielders out there. So I guess my question is, what is the ceiling of Wyatt Langford? And Joe's putting out perennial all-star possibilities, and I don't know enough about him I didn't really watch him much last year, um, to throw that out. But if that's the case, then yeah, it's definitely closer than yeah. But time will tell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think it's even for both of your rosters for sure. I mean, yeah, the obvious adding, perennial catcher and Adley Rutschman's a huge upgrade there. Um, I thought it was a very fair deal for both sides. Carter, I know you were particularly looking for a little bit of an offensive upgrade overall. And I think Langford's going to give that to you just from a pure scoring more points perspective. Adley and JT, I think, are types of catchers that will go out and play easily 140, 150 games because, you can also throw them at the DH as well if you're the two actual managers of those teams. So, they're consistently getting a ton of at-bats. They're both solid offensive producing catchers, but, yeah, great for Carter to get, a potential all-star. I think, as Joe mentioned in Langford there, I think that's yeah, it's a definite possibility is that he could go out and make an all-star team this year, being in such a good lineup and being such a young player. So, uh, just great to see the league making a couple of moves. I know there's also been some trade talks heating up amongst people that are in this call as well. Joe in particular is kind of itching to make a move before we see opening day coming up later this week.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of good players out there, and I think I have some good players to offer as well. So always open to trades, always looking to get a deal done that can be beneficial for both sides. So always open to hear offers.
Are you throwing any names out there?
Yeah, I definitely think that Freddie Peralta's on the market. And I think for the right price, Austin Riley is also on the market.
Noted.
Yeah,
Okay.
two solid names right there. John, I'm assuming you're pretty high on Peralta being a big Brew Crew guy.
I've got some thoughts, but I don't want to throw around the trade market here for Joe. It wouldn't be fair to Joe or any of the other managers, but I do have some particular thoughts about Freddie Peralta. But I actually want to ask Carter a question here about the trade. I was just like, I know we talked about it a while ago, but what were you hoping to get out of it? Like Adley is an Oriole. Like he's Mr. Oriole, right? Like
I
that's your
know.
team. Like what were you hoping to make this trade? What would make it worth
Um, well, I know, yeah, you're right. He is like Mr. Oreo, but I think I've mentioned before, but like a big mistake I made last year that I learned, and you guys had warned me before go before the stash draft too, is getting all the Orioles players, and I ended up doing that, and I had yeah Gunnar, Adley, Kauser, and Mountcastle, and at some points during the season Heston too. And just having that many Orioles burnt me in the end a little bit, especially in that second half there. So I guess in the back of my mind, making this trade, I really wanted to diversify my roster a little bit more. So now I think it's just yeah Gunner and Kauser that I got now, uh, but yeah, just trying to chase that upside for the most part with Langford there. Hoping he still continues that those later months there from the 2024 season.
I got another question here for you, Carter. Now that you've moved on from an Oriole, you might be looking to move on from a couple other Orioles. Are you concerned that you might be called a fraudulent Oriole fan now that I have Adley and Jackson Holliday? That I might be the
You
number
do
one
have
Oriole
Jackson.
fan in this league.
The Detroit Orioles.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
we
you
can
should
add
change
a
your name
third
there.
team here, all right?
I mean, if you're looking to make a trade for Jackson there, my ears are always open.
Gunner, 1-1.
I mean,
Gunner for Holiday.
I think what it really comes down to is if Jackson Holliday can learn how to hit 200 in the MLB. Because if he can't, I think
Having a
you
great spring,
gotta.
Joe. He's having a great spring.
Yeah, I mean it's spring though, right? It's definitely not real. But sure.
I would say that it is real. In fact, these games are real, that the pitchers on the other team are, in fact, trying their best as well. Is it everything? No. But is it something? Yes.
Hey, nothing would make me happier than Jackson Holliday to go out there and slug 40 home runs and be a great hitter. I don't know.
That would make two of us. Couldn't make me happier if that happened.
Are you guys hearing that? I think our producer is actually telling me that Norfolk Tide's third baseman Kobe Mayo is also on the trade block, a first round stash draft pick of the Lou Collins Heartthrobbers. Isn't that intriguing?
That's
And
very intriguing.
real quick, who is the manager of the Lou Collins Heartthrobbers?
I think he's co-commissioner, something like that.
Oh, okay.
But circling all the way back to the original conversation here with JD nailed it. Like when he said that being able to pick up some more depth in the outfield is a lot easier than picking up catcher depth. That's why I was willing to make that trade more and trading off, because like last season, I know it's not going to happen every year. I was able to pick up Brent Rooker, who turned out to be like a top 30 fantasy player for the year. Like there's a lot more options in my mind to find for an outfield depth than there are for, at catcher.
I think that's totally fair. I mean, Adley has the obvious edge over JT, especially like long term. But at the same time, I think that, we talked about the fairness of the deal. It is so even too because Carter also finds an immediate replacement in that position without having to go into the list of our league's free agents. I mean, there are definitely a couple of names out there. I mean, Francisco Alvarez is out there in free agents in our league. He's starting the year on the injured list. I mean, there's a couple guys, but it's the type of position that your options are very limited for sure.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, so with that, wrapping up our segment here on the Blockbuster deal between John, the Detroit Mariners, and Carter Riztopia, let's hear a word from our sponsor, Blockbuster.
Okay, I'll spell it out for you. Blockbuster's got thousands of these boxes filled with more movie star types than anybody else on the planet. Plus, they got anything you'd ever want. They got drama, they got comedy, they got kid stuff, they got thrillers. They even have foreign films with subtitles in case you want to do a little reading while you watch the film. Thousands of ways to have a good time. And you can keep them for more than one night. So if you want to have a good time, pow, make it a Blockbuster night.
All right. We're back, folks. Quick thanks again to our sponsor, Blockbuster. And we're going to be now talking about the stash draft. So kind of a couple different brief points here we'd like to talk about. Looking at everybody's kind of strategy, any standouts, and kind of just talking about it as it was our first time doing it.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about the format here. So, as we mentioned previously in the episode, so looking at our active rosters, 23 total roster spots. And at the beginning of last year, we decided to basically establish an extra roster for every single team in the league, which we are calling the stash. So, naturally, to have a stash, we decided to have an extra draft, hence the stash draft, which is definitely a mouthful to say. There was definitely some debate on how many rounds we would do. We heard varying opinions, somewhere between 3 to 10 players. Decided to go middle ground, 5 rounds in the draft. So you have 5 players on your stash. And in order to draft somebody onto your stash, they must have rookie eligibility per Major League Baseball rules. And they also must not, of course, be on somebody's current roster. Hence, a player like Jackson Holliday, who's on John's roster, could not be drafted in the stash draft. So that's a little look into the format. And a note for the regular season, so a player that you draft onto your stash, they can remain on your stash even if they lose their rookie eligibility during the season. It's the following year that they'll have to be moved up to your active roster or dropped. So you're looking at a lot of different, types of players, because you're considering international, you're considering rookies that may have already debuted, um, but still have that rookie eligibility. And then you're looking at guys that are fresh out of the last MLB draft. So let's throw it over to JD here first. From a strategy standpoint, there's a couple different ways you can go here. You're either looking at a guy that's maybe major league ready or a guy that's more of a stash for the future. What was your approach going into the draft?
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed the draft a lot, so I'm looking forward to next year's too. But I kind of went with more like high ceiling guys, at least looking at those guys, and then kind of depending on who was there, at my pick, So I went with Walcott to start just because he was getting I was just hearing a lot of good things about him, and so I just kind of went for it. And then also with Made too. So kind of do more high risk, high reward kind of stuff. But I also kind of ended up with, Rushing and Meyer, who I feel like have more of a floor directly and could be up soon. So it was kind of a mix, but I definitely targeted more high ceiling guys personally. But that was kind of my first go at the stash draft.
Thoughts there, John?
Yeah, I didn't really know exactly what my strategy was going in. It kind of felt like you're just playing darts. You're like, hopefully I hit on something and like at least I hit the board, At least the players were on the list. The player that I'm most excited for is one of the more unique prospects. I don't know if you guys have heard of Jet Williams in the Mets organization. He's like 5'6", outfielder, but like he has an upside with power. Like they think he could be a 20 home run guy with a bunch of stolen bases. one of the biggest concerns I had like going into this draft was kind of some of these preset rules we had. Like after a year, like once they get that year service time, right, and they don't have rookie eligibility, they have to be on your active roster. Some of these guys take 3-4 years to like develop into good players. So you kind of need guys that have skill sets that are going to be able to contribute right away. And one of those skill sets for young players is speed. And so I kind of was looking around for some players that were going to provide more speed for me. And that's something I'm lacking on my team right now is the speed aspect.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we're still kind of trying to figure out from a rules standpoint is like, you know, could you just clear house if all your guys end up, you know, losing that rookie eligibility this coming season, which theoretically it's probably not going to happen for every single team, but it's like, could I just, could I just drop them essentially? I mean, because you do have two options. You either move them up to your active roster or they get dropped and then they become a free agent within the league. So yeah, for me, my strategy going in was to get kind of a mix of guys, a couple guys that could see major league at bats this year in Kobe Mayo and Jace Young, who was kind of a sleeper pick for me in the fifth round there. And then from a pitching standpoint, I wanted to get a couple of younger arms, maybe a year out, maybe September call up guys, and Noah Schultz of the White Sox and Chase Burns as well. But looking at some of the international guys, Roki Sasaki was the obvious number one pick for Tom. I went with another sleeper in there too of Carter's Orioles, Tomoyuki Sagano. I mean, he's 35 years old, but for me, I was thinking, yeah, let's throw him on the stash. This could be a guy that I maybe look to call up if he gets off to a hot start. And he's probably likely to lose that rookie eligibility at some point too. So for me, it was just about kind of finding that middle ground and getting a nice mix.
Yeah, I definitely think that was my goal, was trying to find a mix between guys that are going to see the field this year versus guys that could be a year or two out, quite possibly longer. So going with my first pick and taking Sung Kim, he's gonna see at bats from day one. Um, I like his upside. And my second pick, Rhett Lauder. I'm extremely high on Rhett Lauder. I spoke about it briefly on last week's episode. He's going to be one of the best pitchers in baseball, so I'm not worried. Um, and I also took Jacob Wilson. Been hearing some rumblings that he could quite possibly be AL Rookie of the Year. So I took those guys because I think they're going to be pretty MLB ready right off the jump. But then I took two guys, Chandler Simpson and Nick Kurtz, who probably, if they see MLB this year, it'll be later half of the season. They're not going to start right away. But as John was saying about trying to find guys that have one really good talent, and he mentioned speed. That's why I went after Chandler Simpson. He can fly. Last year in the minors, he had 100 stolen bases. So I think he's going to be an absolute threat on the base pass. And when Tampa Bay does call him up, I think he'll perform quite well.
Now, a few players that really stood out to me, and I feel like, there were some rumblings of them before, but just because they've all had such a hot spring training, it's the Red Sox trio. Carter taking one member of that trio in Roman Anthony. Tell us a little bit about that first round pick for you there, Carter.
Yeah, he just was definitely on pretty much every website he went to. He was one of the number one picks for um rookie eligibility. Grabbing that guy was definitely number one on my list there. And yeah, like you said, he is part of that trio with the Red Sox, and I think like yesterday or today, Christian Campbell got the nod, joining the Red Sox roster, I think.
Yeah, he did.
He did? Okay. So pretty cool for him. Who took him? I know. Um, Justice.
Uh, Yeah, Justice grabbed him in the first round. So I
Yeah,
mean, those guys were gone pretty quick.
yeah. So that would be pretty cool for Justice too. I'm sure to have that guy on his team right from the bat if he wants to add him to his active roster there. Um, but yeah, I was shot too. My second round pick, Matt Shaw. I wasn't expecting him to be up day one, but he was chosen and went to Tokyo there. So that was pretty cool to see his first at bat and got his first hit too. I think in the second game or something. So that was pretty cool to see. So yeah, gonna have to make some decisions at the end of the season there for who to drop and who to move around from that stash draft there. I I'm thinking Jordan Lawler will come up sometime this season as well. Um, uh, but I think my third and fifth picks there are more long term there. I can't really see them coming up anytime soon there. But my first, second, and third or fourth, I'm thinking they will. Well, Matt Shaw already is, but yeah.
Fair enough. Any additional thoughts there, gentlemen? Other picks that stood out, sleeper picks, picks that you didn't like.
Yeah,
Um,
there. Oh, not a pick I didn't like, but a pick that I was hoping to like get a steal later. Joe going with Hai Sung Kim like right away completely threw me off. I had that as like more of a late round guy, but somebody who I definitely wanted. But you know, Joe got him.
Yeah, and throwing it actually right back at you. I would have loved to get Lorenzo. I was hoping that nobody really had their eyes on him, and obviously, the majority of us being Tigers fans, I'm assuming someone had their eyes on him. And when you took him, I was like, man, I was really hoping with my last pick that I could have snagged him. But that was one of my standouts. Was that pick?
Yeah, I tried to not have too much bias going into like I tried to kind of shy away a little bit from the Tigers and one player, one team owner, I should say, in our league, Kyle, going with several Tigers picks. Max Clark falling to the second round is interesting in a league that is dominated by Tigers fans. And Kevin McGonigle is being like, he's on a
That's
lot of
mine. Yeah.
insiders, like top five, top 10 lists.
yeah.
I mean, he hit that home run off of Aaron Nola in spring training just the other day. Like, I mean, can you guys believe that McGonigle fell to the fourth round?
I think a lot of people were kind of stuck in that same lens of I don't want to just pick a Tigers player, and that's why Clark fell and then McGonigle fell. And I think you saw a few Tigers players got drafted, yeah, lower than they should have been because people were almost scared to draft their own players.
He was
Yeah.
definitely gonna. I was gonna pick him if he fell to me at the fourth round. I think I had someone. I think rushing was my third pick, and I liked him more than McGonagall at the time. So I mean, if I'm remembering back, but yeah, he was looking back on it. That's a good pick for fourth round.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it, I think everybody tried to keep bias out of it as much as possible, but at the same time, like at least my fear with like taking a guy was, for the Tigers was, okay, if this guy turns out to be like not good, not only is he on my favorite team, he's on my fantasy team now. So I wasted a spot on him and he sucks. Like I think it would double hurt, but at the same time, it would also hurt twice as much if he ends up being a great prospect and I didn't take him and he's on my favorite team. Like it's tough.
Yeah. In a similar vein, I picked two prospects that were in the AL Central, and I thought, well, if they're going to be good, like, and they're going to torment me, 18 games a year as a Tigers fan, like,
Right.
at least they're on my team and they're doing it for my fantasy. It's like hedging your bets a little bit.
Right. Right.
Yeah, the other thing we haven't talked about is this was a non-snake format as well. So, I mean, just a lot different of a drafting style too. Like what we've really tried to do in this league is create competitive balance. And I think the lottery format for how we really chose the order for this draft is totally fair because, and as John and I talked about, um, a few weeks ago, like this is not a league that you can tank in. even though it might be desirable to try to go for one of the top picks. And like it was such an obvious number one this year with Sasaki. But some really solid players went within those first three, four picks.
Yeah. I think it kind of fell off after, like 4 or 5, and that's why I kind of just went for it with Walcott because I wasn't sure about everyone else after that. But yeah, there's who knows with all these picks. Some guys are ranked super high and then they totally don't reach it, and then guys like McGonigle, who goes in the 4th round, could be one of the best hitters from this draft. So who knows?
So hard to tell if somebody's going to pan out or not.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking back earlier today about the draft that we held last year, just the regular draft. And like 1 year later, for players that we all knew, it's still like, wow, that person went in front of that person. And now it's like this draft, we're not going to know the results for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll definitely have to do like a looking back kind of episode on this on these drafts at one point.
Little time capsule, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
definitely. Yeah, some good thoughts overall. It was definitely nice to have another draft this year and to look forward to having this every year, as JD mentioned. I mean, in a dynasty league, typically you're only drafting just the once, and so to have this added bonus of being able to research players and hopefully build your team for the near or more distant future is definitely, I think a draw to stick around in this league. I mean, we're trying to do our best, like we said, to keep that competitive balance, but also to really limit the amount of turnover that we have with owners as well.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Couldn't agree more on that front. I think it's nice to get another draft in there for sure. As much as it is nice to be able to play the market and see who guys drop and why they dropped them. It's nice to get another draft in there and almost in a sense do a bit of a reset.
Yeah, without a doubt. A lot to look forward to this week in baseball. We've got opening day coming up starting on Thursday. There will be 14 total games playing, with the first one starting at 3 o'clock Eastern. We'll have plenty to talk about on that front in next week's episode. Obviously, a nice weekend series to look forward to for the majority of folks in our league, Tigers fans, with opening up against the Dodgers. Should be a fun weekend series preview, but that's going to do it for this week's episode. We'd like to thank Western Michigan University graduate student John Ostindi for joining us here on episode 2. Thank you to the league commissioner. Any final thoughts as our first special guest?
Yeah, I appreciate the honor, and I look forward to talking some more ball with you guys later on in the season.
Yeah, for sure. And if you would like to be featured on next week's episode, drop a comment down below. We are looking for another guest for next week's episode, where we will focus on opening day, opening weekend for the MLB, chat about who is off to a hot start from a fantasy standpoint. But in the meantime, we'd like to thank everyone for tuning in, and never stop chasing your little big league dreams.